This is Accountability Partners. Welcome. Okay, here we hold each other accountable in our spiritual walk with God. In each episode, we share what it looks like to nurture our souls and mature spiritually in our everyday lives. So let's talk, let's grow, and let's step into all we were created to be, one conversation at a time. Hi, I'm Marquita.
And I'm Bianca.
And this week's episode, we are going to give you a peek into our conversation on seeing ourselves clearly. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good morning. My hello sounds like an old lady. Hello. I am just making some coffee. You know what I have to get? I have to get what's the name of the coffee maker that you have that you told me?
Oh, the Bialetti.
The Bialetti. I have to get that
I made
coffee.
one this morning with this cardamom coffee. It was
Was
like
it good?
it was very good. It was very, very good.
What's up for today?
Today, I wanted to touch on self-awareness. I know that we
Oh,
were talking
good.
about
Yeah.
it before. I know I texted you about this crazy stat. Only 10 to 15% of people are truly self-aware.
Well, that's crazy.
Isn't that
Right?
wild?
But
You
you know
know?
what? Really, that's a crazy stat, but I can see where that's so, right?
Mhm.
Like, even judging from me, because I'm not gonna judge anybody else, but I'm gonna judge myself because I wanna make sure always that, I'm growing and I'm evolving.
Totally.
So just thinking about me and how I started just on this path of um on my spiritual voyage, right? Like
Mhm.
just thinking about how necessary it is to be self-aware, to be able to see yourself. And I remember all of the resistance I had in being able to admit certain things to me because they
Yeah.
had become a shield to protect myself from criticism or all these other things. Like I developed this story about and around myself that I was living out of. And it wasn't really the truth of who I was, but because I needed a defense or because I felt like I had to protect myself or be in this survival mode all the time, I had to create these things and put them in place in my life to be able to deal with people and things. And when I started to like really self-reflect in the beginning, I realized how much I had to unlearn and tear down. And I really was not self-aware. And you have to be able to be self-aware because if not, you make up these stories around what's hurting you, what's not hurting you, what like you just the sense of awareness is like out the door.
Mhm.
And be
Mhm.
able to admit it, right? And not be on the fence about all the things. So I had to see where I was offensive. I'm sorry,
Mhm.
see what made me be defensive and ask myself why. It's like get cutting through all the blame because I immediately blamed other people. It's like just really being honest with yourself about who you are. And so if you live in this space of I always want to be I always want to see myself clearly, I
Yes.
need to be able to face what's in the way of that, even if it's like embarrassing to me or whatever. Because there was a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, and a lot of just me being hard on myself after I realized like all these things I had put in place to be able to function, right?
Mhm.
Like, I'm like, can I be 100% me and not have all these things? Like, I want to be able to say, you know what? Okay, yeah, I do that. Or be able to say, you know what? That's something I need to work on. Or even say, "No, that's not me," but be really real about it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and then what do you think about asking people for feedback? I
Mm,
definitely have to be choosy of
yeah.
who we
I was
ask
about
for
to say that.
feedback.
I remember taking this workshop and this class, and it was very much in my infancy stage of all of this, and one of the exercises we had to do was go and ask 3 people what the good things were about us and what the bad things were. And I
Mm.
asked my bully, "Why did I do that?" But I didn't know, right?
Yeah.
Like, I was so excited to be able to say, "I can ask
Yeah.
this person and not be offended." But I asked the wrong person, and it tore me up because they saw me through whatever wounds they were dealing with. "Oh my gosh, this is what you always say about me that isn't true," right? Because you
Yeah.
don't see me clearly. How can I ask you what it is that is bad about me? Like, but I was just so hungry to, like, get through all my issues and be able to
Mhm.
say that I can deal with this all my stuff. Like, I did know, like, I was insecure and had all these things, but I wanted that to be out of my life, and I was so hungry for it to be that I thought taking this class and doing this exercise was like, "Oh, yeah, but you don't go to your abuser basically if someone's, like, emotionally abusing you or whatever
Mhm.
and ask what's wrong with you." Right? Like
100%. They have to
yeah.
clear their stuff before they can, help you point out your stuff.
Right, like, you're go my intention was to go in it about me, but if the other person is not on the same page, they just like, "Well, you're this, that, and that." And if they're not able to see themselves clearly, then how are they going to see you clearly? And
You clearly.
that's the other thing because I've been thinking a lot and talking a lot about the importance of being self-aware and your walk with God, right?
Mhm.
Because if you can't see yourself clearly, you're gonna have a hard time receiving the way that God sees you, right? And it's going to taint the way that you experience your relationship with him if you yourself can't aren't self-aware enough. Like because going back to what I just said, if I'm not self-aware and I have all these things in the way, I'm gonna love like that, right? Imma see other
Mhm.
people like that. Imma see God
Yeah.
like that, and so I'm not having a true experience of other people, nor am I giving them grace, nor am I believing them, right?
Yeah.
So, it's just so, like, interesting how it's in tandem, like, you to have a really good sense of self-awareness, and you have in order to be able to really deepen your relationship with God and get close. Like, if you can't admit certain things about yourself, you're gonna go to God thinking that you can like create all these stories, realizing like, oh, he knows everything about me anyway. So who am I fooling? But you're gonna come
Mhm.
to him with so much shame and so much guilt that you're not gonna be able to open your heart up the way that is
Yeah.
necessary to grow in that. You know what I mean?
We have to see how God sees us and receive that he sees us as precious, beloved, his children. We accept that of how
Hmm.
he sees us. We're able to accept other people in
Yeah,
that
because
way.
if you can't accept what it is that is written about who you are and your image and you're not gonna believe that, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
gonna be definitely, like you can say it, but are you really believing? Are you will you continue to hide yourself, right? And I
Yeah.
think that that's what
Exactly.
happens if we can't muster the courage to put ourselves on full display, and with ourselves and
Mhm.
with God, but it starts with being able to, um go through all the misunderstandings you held about yourself and say, "Okay, yeah, I do this here." Or if
Mhm.
someone tells you this about yourself, you're able to take a true assessment versus getting offended and not being able to hear because I feel like that's another
Yeah.
strategy to stay the way you are instead of growing. Like, if you get offended and think someone is always coming at you in a particular way, but they're trying to give you instruction
Mhm.
about something that you need to let go of or transform about yourself, if you are always offended, you're not gonna be able to hear it, right? And that's
Yeah.
hard. Especially sometimes your bully can tell you something about yourself, but it takes a level of maturity to be able to hear it through,
Yeah.
hear it even though you may be um you're it's hard to receive it from someone who's hurt you or who you feel don't have a
Yeah.
good sense of self, a sense of you. And
You
I
know?
think that that comes later. Like, I don't think if you're first starting, you're going to be able to take some like he you know, I don't think he's gonna send that person to kinda tell you about yourself. I think later on, he made to see, "Okay, let me stretch you to see if you can receive something from anybody." You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then let's say if someone is easily offended or if
Mhm.
someone is very sensitive, how can they start building that up so they're not as offended? They can take it as constructive criticism and not take it so personal.
I think it's actually deeper than just saying, "I'm gonna do it," because you gotta look at what's hurting you, right? Like,
Mhm.
you have to because if you're offended, this is what I believe. If you're offended by it, if you're offended by something that someone's saying about you, you believe that about yourself.
Mhm. It's like a trigger.
Yeah, like no one can say I'm a thief. I'll be like, okay, whatever, because I know I'm not a thief. Or
Yeah.
no one can say you're a liar. No, because I know I'm not. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
if they're saying things about you that are triggering you, you need to take a look and say, is this something that I believe about myself? Or is this something that I'm actually doing? Am I
Yeah.
this? You know what I mean? Or
Mhm.
where am I doing this? Right? Like,
Yeah.
where am I doing this? Like, I remember back in the day, I was in a relationship and the person would always like badger me, like, you're a liar, you're a liar. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And I felt like I had to prove to myself, to them, like, no, I'm not. But then I had to sit back. I'm like, wait a minute. When I'm not speaking up for myself, when I'm not saying how I truly feel, I am lying, right? So
Mm.
it
Yeah.
would like make me mad because there was there were aspects of myself that I was lying in my life, and I'm like, I am. You know what I mean? But I
You mean
had
like
to,
lying to yourself?
yeah, lying to myself, or even like, if you're in I don't know all of your stuff, but if you've ever been in any verbally abusive or emotionally abusive relationships,
Mhm.
you learn how to cope. And a lot of that, some of that can be in you managing the situation by saying the things you know that they need you to say so you don't start an argument or
Yeah.
anything like that's a
Yeah.
lie, right? And so when he would say that, I would get like, no, I'm not, whatever, very like, instead of now being like, man, you're tripping, you need to go, that's you. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But
Mhm.
then I would get so defensive because I was walking around every day not being real about what I was feeling because I was
Mhm.
scared or I just didn't wanna deal with the fight, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So, I had to be able to see that about myself. And it wasn't just that situation. I had been doing that the majority of my life in order to fit in, be accepted, whatever it was. You know what I mean? So I was lying to myself. So self awareness, authenticity, all of that plays a part in healing your soul, growing your relationship with God, and being able to receive the love, the compassion, the grace, the mercy that He has. It's something you have to work to do. Like, people can say, "I'm gonna live unapologetic." Like,
Yep.
I want things to go from a quote or a cliche to an actuality in a person's life. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna
Mhm.
move these quotes or just inspire others to, like, move these quotes and these cliche sayings to actual experiential ways of how you're living, you know? Imma
Yeah.
be unapologetic. If you're not healthy and whatever, that's gonna look a little crazy, right?
Mhm.
So that might look like I could just come out here and do whatever I want. You know what I mean?
I see what you
And
mean,
yeah,
yes.
and I understand going to the extreme side of the continuum in life. Like when you first start doing something, I understand that. It's like when people say when people get saved, they just go like holier than thou. If you are living unapologetically, you have to also have a sense of self in that because you can come out here and think that I'm just going to do whatever I want to do, right? And I was likening it to when people get saved and they think they have to do all these things, it's not comfortable, right? They think they have to be
Yeah.
be the other people that are saved, how they look. It's an act kinda until it, like,
Mhm.
integrates into who you are, because it's so personal, right? And so, if you're trying to be like sister so and so, it's not gonna feel right until, like,
Yeah, it won't work.
Yeah, so that's the same thing with being who you are, right? And I know I've done that, like, I just I've done that myself, like, feeling like not really knowing what that means for me when you
Mhm.
spend yourself not really walking in a space of authenticity, like, finally deciding, "I'm going to do it," and then not really knowing what that looks like, but wanting to do it so fast that you just, like, become what you see on the outside or examples of people, right? And it's just that's
Yeah.
not authentic, but, yeah,
Yeah, it's not sustainable because it's not
it's
you.
not you, yeah. That's why, so yeah, self-awareness is key. That is alarming, but it's, hopefully with things like this, sharing your story, sharing my story, and people get more comfortable, um accepting all that they are and
Mhm.
letting people see what it looks like to be transformed, like telling the behind the scenes story of that, then people will be more comfortable dropping the facades, taking a look at who they are, and being able to receive, um, the things that they need to do to change, to transform,
Yeah,
to see
exactly.
themselves clearly. So, yeah, that's good. Okay, guys, this week's accountability challenge, you ready for it? Fill in this blank. I can see clearly now that blank is gone. What have you removed? What has been blocking you from seeing yourself clearly?
Stay accountable by visiting howigrewtoday.com, where you can subscribe to our newsletter for weekly journal prompts delivered every Sunday, along with reflections and spiritual prescriptions shared every week.